Hey, welcome back to another Crabby Dice Talks and Rants about Kickstarter. So today is going to be a very dungeon crawly type episode here. We're going to be looking at 3 dungeon crawl games. But before we start, if you can like, subscribe, and comment on my YouTube channel, that would be fantastic. Let's get started. Alright, here we go. So the first game we're going to look at today is not actually on Kickstarter. It's the Heroquest game system. Well, you all know that this exists. It is a dungeon crawl from about 30 years ago that's making a comeback here by Hasbro, and they're using their own platform here called Hasbro Pulse. So if you want it, you gotta come on this website. Alright, so I'm gonna sort of switch this up a little. For this one, I'm not gonna really talk about the gameplay. Honestly, it's a 30-year-old game. They're not changing it up, so there's already enough complaints to deal with that. What I'm just gonna do a bit is rebuttal some of the things that other people are saying, because people are complaining about this project, but I sort of see the other side of it as well. So let's get started, okay? So the first thing I just really want to talk about is people complaining that they didn't change the system at all. So it's what you see is almost exactly the game published 30 years ago, okay? Now, 2 problems. First problem is Hasbro was gonna get complaints no matter what they did, all right? If they brought back the exact same game like they did now, people are gonna complain that the game's too old and needed to be refined, whatever. And then if they completely change the system, people would complain that it's not the Heroquest that they remember. All right, so they were sort of in a catch-22. They couldn't win this argument. Now, I am gonna complain to Hasbro that honestly, this is the laziest thing they could have done. Just reprint the old game. I played the game 6, 7, 8 years ago. It's a really old system. It's not gonna hold up at all. I wouldn't back this with a 10-foot pole. I'll get back to that later in the argument. All right. The second argument is why it's not on Kickstarter. Guys, honestly, I don't blame Hasbro for this. Why would they use Kickstarter? They're a multi-billion-dollar company. They can turn around tomorrow and buy Kickstarter if they wanted, and it wouldn't even make a blip on their freaking bottom line. All right. They have their own website. They wanted to put it on, and this is mostly a pre-order. They're gonna make the game anyway. Okay. They didn't even need the money. They were probably just gauging to see if there was actually interest, or better yet, this is just a gigantic publicity stunt because now everyone knows what Hasbro Pulse is. Did anyone actually know what Hasbro Pulse was before this campaign? Guaranteed not. Alright, there's no chance anyone knew what this website was unless you're big into collecting G.I. Joes or whatever else they make. But here you go. Now we know what Hasbro Pulses, and maybe they'll start having other campaigns on this platform. Okay, so that's fine. Maybe they'll improve it and so on and so on. Now, the one thing I am gonna say that I blame Hasbro for this website is the communication on it is pretty bad. All right. The one good thing about Kickstarter is the comment section, so maybe the company can actually read the comments and, you know, answer some of the questions people have. This one doesn't have anything like that. That's why I'm saying it's a pre-order system. You're basically giving them the money. You can't communicate. There's no interaction. You're just gonna pay, and you're gonna get the product in a year, whenever it comes out. Okay. Also, the communication sucks on this website. Again, one of the major things: what's changing in the rules? What's changing in the quest book? The only thing they have are these 2 blurbs here, basically saying only minor tweaks. Yeah, but what are those tweaks? You can write a little blurb somewhere on this whole page saying what it's going to be. This page is essentially just saying what the price of the game is going to be and what's in the box. Okay, there's no indication of what's changed. Most of the art, you know, there's nothing. All right, there's nothing like important displayed. It's just fluff. Okay, so that's my issue with Hasbro. Now, looking at the other side, some of the complaints from people actually backing this thing, or I wouldn't say back, just pre-ordering this thing. One complaint is they didn't like this because of the whole credit card situation. There's a new system that you need to put your credit card in. You know what? That's arguing just for the sake of arguments, all right? Especially if you're in this hobby, you have your credit card information in dozens upon dozens of websites, all right? If you're ordering games from Germany on BackerKit, GameFound, all those websites, on Kickstarter itself, on GoFundMe, on Portal's website when they had their game, on GMT website when they had their game, on Archon Studios when they have their game. You know, in this hobby, almost every single company has their own store. On Stronghold's website, I ordered something that I had to enter my credit card information. Almost every company has a web store, and if you want to order, well, you're putting in your credit card information. So, you know, that's just an argument for argument's sake. All right. Now, the one major problem I have with the game is that they didn't change it at all. All right, I already mentioned it at the start here. This is a really old system, okay? I think that most of the people getting this think, well, not think, I don't think they've played the game, or they've just heard stories and wanted to play the game, but because it's so hard to find, they think this is their only way to get it. So, you know what, I'm gonna give $100 bucks or $150 here to get the game so I can finally have it and play it. This is really gonna affect the long-term value of this thing. All right, so let's talk about value first. Before I get into that, first I'll talk about value, what's in the box. If you want what's in the box, if you look at this picture here, you get so much plastic and cardboard, it's worth $100 bucks. Okay, but that's content-wise. What's more important though is the long-term value of this product. I think because they're gonna print dozens of thousands of copies of this game, you know what, this is Hasbro. You're gonna see it in every Toys R Us, in the pharmacy next to the PS4s. You're gonna see it at Barnes and Nobles. You're gonna find it everywhere. Okay, every toy store in America is gonna have this game. Okay, if you want this game, you will find it. And because of that, the long-term value of this thing is gonna suck. Okay, not only that, not only is it gonna suck because there's so many copies of this being made, it's also gonna suck because let's say 30,000 people are backing it. Well, I don't know how many people are, do the math, whatever. 20,000 people are gonna back this game. Again, like I said before, a lot of people haven't played this game, so they're gonna play it. They're gonna realize that the system sucks because they've never played it and they were just hearing stories. The roll and move, the complete repetitive gameplay over and over and over again. The game does not hold up to today's standards, all right? It was probably the greatest thing since sliced bread back 30 years ago. But right now, if you play it today, you're going to be very disappointed. And because of that, they're going to open their copy, they're going to play it twice. They're going to say this doesn't hold up to the dozens upon dozens of awesome dungeon crawl games that we have nowadays. And they're going to try to get rid of it on the market. And even if 5% of those people put it on the market, there's going to be hundreds upon hundreds of copies of this out in the wild. So if you want it, you can pick it up for pennies on the dollar. All right, that's what I'm going to say about the long-term value. And that's pretty much my resume overall on this product. I really wouldn't back it. Just if you really want to play it, just wait for a second-hand version. You'll be able to buy it for guaranteed less than the prices that are here. Plus, you wouldn't have to pay shipping. So don't worry about it. All right, so that's my sort of guesstimation of the value. Let's just go on to the next one. All right, here we go with the second one today. Another dungeon crawl here. It's a Machina Arcana with the, I guess they call it To Eternity because it comes with the expansion. All right, so this is brought to us by Andreama Games. I hope that's how you say it. And this is their second created, but not really, because their first game was Machina Arcana as well. So they basically only released this game a couple of times. So there's some good things, bad things here to talk about this game. So let's get through it. All right. So like I said, this is a dungeon crawl. I know they're saying that it's not really a dungeon crawl, but just because it's a Cthulhu theme instead of a high-low fantasy steampunk type thing, it's still a dungeon crawl, right? You're doing just the dungeon crawly type things, moving your character on the board, using your abilities, attacking monsters, trying to move on the story. Okay, so it's a picture that you see here, and you're moving from tile to tile. All right. So first, let's tackle the mechanics. All right, so there's some good things and bad things. So this is just your typical dungeon crawl. You're gonna do your typical dungeon crawl things. The one interesting part of this game, though, in the mechanics, it's using the whole Flashpoint / Conan style system. Not exactly the same. I'm gonna try to find you a picture as I talk. Here you go. So you can have like action points to use per round. So every type of thing you want to do costs action points, and you'll just be moving it down and doing your action. All right, so that's what the third track is here. That leads to one of my negatives about the game. There's no really like a refund system like in those two other games like Flashpoint and Conan, where you get to keep some gems, get some chits to use in the following turn. In this one, well, if you don't use up 2 action points, you're out of luck, right? So I hate that. Don't really like that system. Let's talk about some really good things though about the game. Let's go back to the top. Now I'm gonna talk about one thing I really love about this game, which are the game tiles. All right, I think this is genius, and a lot more games should adopt this method of having a world. Okay, so how I can explain this is whenever you play a typical dungeon crawl, it's always the same thing, right? You're going through the box to find the correct tile. Then you got to go find the correct items to put on the tile, find the warps or the spawn points and all that jazz, and put it on the board, spending time on the setup, putting the doors, and doing that for every single tile on the map. All right, Gloomhaven style. That's why we all wish that Gloomhaven had that book since edition number 1. Okay, that sucks. This one solves that problem. It's amazing. All right, none of the tiles are tied to the mission. All right, so at the start of the mission, you'll just, you know, shuffle all those tiles together, front and back, and just put it out. Put your guys on the starting space of the tile, and you're ready to go, because all those things are pre-printed on the board, and you're set to go, right? Now, when you activate a chest on the board, you just cover it up with a deactivation marker, and it's amazing. All right, so you don't have to fiddle with the setup. You can get going in no time. All right, and then you hit a doorway on the other side, you'll create a new tile, just go through the stack again, grab another one, you know, connect the board and move on to the next one. Really, really great system. I think it's fantastic. Okay, now we'll jump on to something I really don't like about the system. Is everything in the game does 1 damage. Okay, I really don't like that system. I really don't. I don't know what else to say. Every single dungeon crawl has like a variable damage system, and this one, I don't know why they went with that 1 damage every time system, right? So it doesn't matter how strong you are, how small, how much, whatever it is, if you pass the hit value, you're dealing a damage. So your weapons don't really matter. Okay, well, not that your weapons don't matter. Your weapons will help to hit, but they'll all do a 1 damage. Alright, now that I'm talking about weapons, another thing I don't like about the game. It's a minor complaint because there are stacking of items in the deck, but the deck items are so unbalanced. I saw a bunch of playthroughs where people were grabbing from the deck, and one playthrough the guy was getting awesome items from the top of the deck, and the other guy was getting garbage stuff. So I don't know if they didn't, you know, stack the decks properly, but maybe that was the case. But that was something that I noticed that I didn't like. Okay, let's jump on to something I did like. So I'm going back and forth here. What I do love about the game also is the chapter system. So I don't really recall any other game on the market that does this, besides maybe Arkham Horror, the card game, maybe does it, or I'm not sure. It's been a while since I played that game. But you're playing chapters or missions, and each mission has a number of chapters, so let's say 7 to 8, and it's always going to be the same deck. So that's the deck you see on this board here. And what's cool about the game is, you know, you're always following a story, and the picture above is going to sort of go with the story that you're reading below. So it's very thematic. You're flipping it over, and then on the right hand side that you see here is the trigger to get to the next chapter, right? So you're trying to do something, kill a monster, activate this point, do something, right? Then you flip it over and you keep going and you go through the mission, right? So that's really thematic, really love it. You're always following like the same steps and paces for that mission. Cool stuff. Now the bad part about that whole system, there are some positives and very negatives with that system, is because of that system and you need to go through all the chapters in one sitting, is that this is a really long game. Okay, folks, keep that in mind. This is probably one of the longest style dungeon crawls you can buy. That's because you can't really break it up. Like if you're playing Gloomhaven, Imperial Assault, Descent, all those systems, right? you're doing missions, and each mission lasts between an hour and an hour and a half, but then it sort of has a reset phase, so you don't have to stay sitting down for 3-4 hours at a time. You can have one mission and do something else, or have 2 missions in a row and do something else, and so on. You can break it apart. The problem with this game is you can't really do that. You can't stop a mission halfway through because there's no really reset that you can do. So you're gonna have to stay sitting and finish the mission. Okay, keep that in mind. Alright, so that's all I really have to say about the gameplay. Oh, there was one stupid other thing that I realized. I really don't like the essence mechanic. That's the first bar you see there. You can use essence to block a damage, but everything deals a damage, so you can almost think like essence like a shield. Essence like a shield. So I saw a bunch of the playthroughs. It was inevitable that when people start getting low on health, they're just trading essence and then killing a monster to get back in essence, and then it's just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It seemed like a very repetitive system, and I think they could have refined it a lot better and maybe figured something out, like giving better ways to heal so that you don't have to use essence as a shield every single time, and it was like a repetitive thing over and over and over again. Anyway, so that's gameplay. I already talked too much about it. It has some great things, some bad things, and so on. Oh, I did forget to talk about one of the most important things about this game is the aesthetics. I normally always talk about that first, but here we go. This game has some of the most beautiful art that I've seen in a game in a long time. Okay, these boards, the standees, the cards, especially the cards, the monsters, even the items. We can go through it. The art on top of the missions here, amazing, great things. The dice are amazing. Look at these the art of these items, they're really nice. I love these 3D pictures. The art of the monsters. I mean, I can put this spider on my wall, it'll give me nightmares for a month. It's fantastic. All right, the art of the characters are over here. You'll see some of the monster art over here. Even this tree's amazing, just amazing, 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 amazing. All right, so let's move on. Let's talk about value now. I talked enough about gameplay and the look. I mean, you can go through this whole page and every single picture looks fantastic. Okay, I cannot find one piece of art that I don't like in this game. Like even this monster, look at this guy. It's absolutely frightening. I love it. There you go. So let's go to the bottom here and let's talk about the value. It is what it is. It's fair for what you get. For 60 bucks, you can get the base game for 60 bucks, or you can pay 100 for the base game with the 2 expansions. Okay, if you go to the section here of what's in the box, I think it's fair. You get 8 explorers, 29 monsters, 10 map tiles, a bunch of item cards, a bunch of event cards, a bunch of scenarios. I believe you get 5 scenarios. You get dual layered player boards here with a dual layered chapter board, 8 dice, laser etched. I didn't even realize that, so that's great. Bunch of tokens, a ton of tokens. The dungeon crawl, you get a ton of tokens, a guidebook, a manual, and play rates. All right, so all that for 60 bucks, really fair price. I don't see a problem with that. It's fine. If you look at the +2 expansions, it's also a fair price. I can't really complain. Okay, so if you want it, get it. What I would suggest is don't get the all-in bundle, because we'll talk about the add-ons later in a couple of seconds. It's kind of a ripoff. Now, I'll pause here 2 seconds, talk about long-term value. I don't really know where this is going to land, right? Because long-term value is almost always dictated on if the game's popular and how high it's going to reach on BGG. Okay, so if this game hits the top 3,000, 2,000, whatever, it's going to be a sought after game because it's sort of a sign that it's a good game. It's extremely rare that a game that's not in the top 5,000 is actually sought after and holds its value. Okay, so right now this game, because the first edition had some problems, it's in the 5,000. So hopefully it'll have, you know, more positive reaction when people start getting it. It'll raise its ranking and people will actually want to play it. The one ding that it does have, it's because the Cthulhu theme, we already have Cthulhu Death May Die, which in my opinion is a much better game system than this. So it's almost like saying, well, if somebody asked me what Cthulhu dungeon crawl game would I suggest, I'm always going to suggest Cthulhu Death May Die over this. So already the market's being slashed in half because they're going to rather get that game than this game. So That's what I got to say about the long-term value. But just my 2 cents. Get it if you like. Let's just talk about some of these these add-ons here. There's the card update pack. If you had the first edition, well, you have no choice but to get this. If you have the first edition, we got the 2 expansions here. That's why you save by, I believe, $10 if you get the $100 pledge. So instead of getting it here, you get this separately. I don't know why you would get them separately. You get a codex here. Don't get the codex. Waste of money. A dice vial. Again, super waste of money. Why would you need this? And then you got sleeves. You know me, never buy sleeves. Here you're getting 200 sleeves, about 170 sleeves for $10. That's a gigantic ripoff. You can get a pack of 100 sleeves for $2. Even if you're paying premium, it's $4 or even less. So it's really expensive here. And if you want to sleeve the whole thing, it's $25. There you go. And then you have game mats, but you know what, you're getting dual layered stuff, so I don't know why you'd want this. So there you go. That's my overall take. It's not a bad project. I'm not gonna back it. And if you're interested in another Cthulhu dungeon crawly thing, well, here you go. This is the project for you. Let's go to the next one. All right, here we go. Last one for today. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this one. This is gonna be Dungeon Universalis, because honestly, there's so much in this box. It's making my head explode. Okay, what I would suggest, if you want to talk about gameplay here, go watch the review here brought to you by Davis here. I forget what his channel is called, the Dungeon Diver. It's a fantastic review. It's a little long, it's about 40 minutes. Go watch it. He'll explain you the game and why he loves it and why he hates it, and I'm sort of agree with him because I haven't played the game. All right, so give it a shot. Essentially, it's a dungeon crawl. It uses a 2d6 system, so you're always trying to hit a value of 10. So you're gonna roll your 2d6, add your modifiers, try to hit 10. So this is for every single check in the game, every single attack, every magic defense, and the game is built on that system. Okay, what makes this game unique is the way they built the game. It's what the guy was trying to explain was that it's based on sort of the advanced Dungeons and Dragons type of game. They had the idea, and literally when they would play this game and work on it, whenever they would think of a rule, they would implement it in the game. That's why it's so massive. Okay, there's almost everything you can imagine in this thing, which could be a good thing or a really bad thing because it's not really focused. Okay, now what he was saying is that the game doesn't fall apart even though it has so many moving parts. But you know what, I might beg to differ. I don't know. I would have to try out the game. Yeah, so I don't really know what to talk about. Let's just talk about value first, and then we'll return back to gameplay. So what is the price to this game? So it's a little on the expensive side, I'm not gonna lie, but that's basically because this is a really indie production. Okay, you're not gonna find this anywhere else. You're not gonna find this in web stores and stores. If you want this game, you're gonna have to back it. All right, you really don't have a choice. This is gonna be $140, and well, if you're a returning backer, it's about $45 extra that you gotta pay to get all the updated stuff. To replace some of the typos of the first game. You'll get an improved campaign map with the campaign, so on and so on and so on. Okay, there are a bunch of add-ons as well. I'm not even going to talk about that because there's just a bunch of stuff you can add to this game. Now what's in the box for $140? That's where you can see if it's really worth it. Okay, there's no plastic whatsoever, but there's a ton of cards. Okay, so let's go through it quick. You get 4 manuals here, including a campaign book. You'll get a 41 double-sided tiles, which is great. 150 tokens, a bunch of room tiles to improve the room, a campaign board, 5 hero mats for the players, a bunch of standees, so many standees. There's so many monsters in this game. That's how big this game is. There's so many monsters. The bestiary book is so gigantic that there's not even standees for specific monsters given to you. All right, let that sink in. The bestiary is so big that it can say you meet up this alligator man and he's got a pole and whatever. You can go through all the standees and not find that character at all. Okay, that they couldn't even print out as many standees as there are bad guys in the game. All right. you could, for this edition, actually get an add-on here, which is a standee bestiary box number 1 to give you all those standees that were missing from all the monsters. And this is a $45 add-on, so imagine how much cardboard is in that box. Okay, that's how insane this game is, how much extra stuff they put in. All right, you get 5 envelopes, a bunch of dice, surprisingly only 8, you know, for a system like this. Although it is a 2d6 system, if everyone has 2 dice, you're probably fine. And then you look at the cards, just a ton of cards. I believe there are around 600 cards here, about, if you calculate the whole thing. Now, the reason I'm saying it's a sort of mediocre or bad deal overall is if you compare this to like Gloomhaven, even the game we just saw, Machina Arcana, didn't really have any plastic either, and compare the contents. Honestly, for those more mainstream games, you get more money for your value. What this is targeting more is more that indie scene, almost like Splotter, right? Splotter stuff, never worth the money. I mean, you can buy any Splotter game, you can open up the box and say, what the hell, I just paid $140 for this. Well, that's just because it's a super limited print run with a really small target audience. So if you wanted, like almost like those 18xx games, another example, right? 18xx games going for 150 bucks. You open up that box and you're like, oh my god, I just wasted all my money, right? But it's because it's a really rare indie game and you got to pay to get it. And this is sort of the same thing. So you're not going to find this in stores. If you want it, you have to back it. All right, so it's not worth it, but you know, because it's such a limited print run, I'm almost guaranteed it's going to hold its value in the long run. It might lose some value if this game is really unplayable. You got to watch the review. It's really unwieldy. And there you go. So you'll probably be able to sell it afterwards. So that's the overall sort of value proposition that we're talking about. Yeah, so I don't really know what else to say about this game. It's it's really something really unique and really a passion of love made by this company, by these 2 guys that worked on this game. What I am going to mention is this was really interesting when I read it. There's so many ways to play this game. You can play with the standard mode with the dark player. That's somebody controlling the bad guys. You can play cooperative mode where there's no bad guy. You can play lone wolf mode, which is 1 player controls everything. RPG mode, so on and so on. Open map mode where you don't have to follow the campaign. You got individual mode. There's so many ways. There's so many monsters. There's thousands of possible ways to create your characters. It's D&D in a box. Now, does that make it a good thing? Who knows? Is it a bad thing? Who knows? It's got fine print text all over the place. There are rules for everything. These guys really, like, every time they were playing this game, and if it's something you can do in D&D, they wrote a rule for it and wrote it on these cards. Look at these cards. Okay, there's stats and tiny text. You got to read everything to try to understand what the hell is going on. You're gonna have to read this rule book 50 times to get all the rules, and so on and so on. So it's really unwieldy, not streamlined at all, but some people like that. All right, some people would want to, you know, go back to the way dungeon crawlers were 20 years ago, when everything had a rule, right? So that's what we're looking at here. I'm not gonna really give you much more information than that. What I would suggest, again, look at that review. You're gonna know if you're gonna like it or not. It was a great review, and that's it. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see what we're gonna cover up next time. Later.